Hi everybody, I just wanted to put together a quick tutorial on how to do the Excel calculations for your project. So here are some sample calculations that I came up with just to kind of illustrate how to go about doing the calculations on your own. Certainly if you have questions or concerns as you're going through to do your own calculations, please just reach out to me and I can help you individually. So the claim that I based this on was that the average U.S. adult woman reads 14 books per year. Now you guys have 100 data samples for this just because it's easier to show. I only did 15. So here's my raw data. This is exactly how you'll put in your raw data, except of course it'll extend further down. But each person will have their own column in here with the number. So there's my raw data. And you can see I've thought about my classes ahead of time so I can set up my frequency table. So I'm going to have a class between 1 and 5 books, 6 and 10 books, 11 and 15 books, 16 and 20 books, and 21 and 25 books. Now, one thing that you can do to make this a little bit easier for yourself is you could sort this data. So I might actually go ahead and do that just to make life a little bit easier. So if I select all of the data, including my header, and let's see here, I am looking for a filter button. Now every form of Excel is a little bit different, so sometimes it can take a minute to reorient yourself to what you're looking at. So I will warn you of that as you guys are going through. Okay, here it is, A to Z with this down button. That's the button for filtering, or it will say filter. So I want to sort these in ascending order just so I can see my data. Okay, so now I've put all my data in order, and you can do this with yours as well. And then it's easier to see your classes. So 1 to 5, I have 3 people. 1, 3, 5. Okay, 6 to 10, I have 4. Okay, 4. Let's see, 11 to 15, I have 5. 16 to 20, I have 2. And 21 to 25, I only have 1 person, 22. Now, to double check myself, as I told you before, I had 15 raw data samples. So let's make sure that this adds to 15. So 3 plus 4 is 7, plus 5 is 12, plus 2, 14, plus 1, 15. So everybody's been represented that's in my raw data, and I now know that everything's been captured. Now, just with this little table right here, I can go ahead and make my charts. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to put a header on them, so you can label them class and frequency or something along those lines. You could name it number of books. But anyway, for the time being, we'll just leave it as frequency, and I'll show you how we can change it afterwards. So if I highlight all of these cells together, and then I go to charts, now some of them, on some versions of Excel, it'll say graphs, or it'll show you little pictures of graphs. So you may have to look around a little bit, but it'll be there. And then once you get into it, it'll look very similar to this. So to make a simple histogram or bar graph, this column graph is what they call it. So in here, there's some different options. So I'll select the 3D stacked columns just because it looks kind of neat. And okay. Now, one thing you're going to notice when I make this table, all I had to do was click on the button with my data selected. Very, very easy. Now, there's some things we can update. If I click on where this title it has here, I can rename this just by clicking on it. And I'm going to rename it. So I'm going to say number of books read by women in 1 year. Okay, so it'll automatically adjust for you. You can see I have my classes along the bottom. I have my frequencies along the top. Now this little bar doesn't mean a whole lot in this graph because there's only one color. So I can actually just delete that. I just clicked on it and I'm just going to delete it and it'll spread it out and make it larger. So there's one of my graphs. Now to make a different kind of graph, I'm just going to go back and select my data again. And this time I'm going to select a pie chart. So I'll do a nice 3D pie because why not? It'll look nice. Maybe I'll do an exploded pie. Why not? Alright, so here is my exploded pie graph, although it's kind of a little bit ugly, but if actually I can push it together a little bit more, if you hover over it, you can move the pieces around in this graph. So I can rename this just like I did with the last graph. So I'll do a little shorthand this time. Number of books read by women in 1 year. All right. Now in this case, I'm going to leave this this legend, and reason being is because the different colors actually mean something on this graph. They're telling me which percentage of the pie or which chunk of the pie represents each of these classes. So there we have it. There are the two graphs. Very, very easy to make in Excel. Only took a couple of minutes. And if you have any questions making your graphs, just reach out to me, but they should be very easy to put together. Okay, so the next thing is let's deal with the statistics we need to do. So here I've listed out the statistics that I recommend people doing. The sum, the average or the mean, your maximum value, your minimum value, the median, mode, and standard deviation. Now I know your book says 8, or your project document says 8 statistics. I consider your confidence interval one of those, which you'll need to calculate by hand because there isn't really a good way to do that in Excel that is for a data set like ours. I consider that one of the 8. So do these 7 as well as your confidence interval, which you'll do by hand. I know that as of right now we haven't learned about confidence intervals yet, but trust me that we will get there and then you'll know what you need to do there. Okay, so to start, we want to do calculations. In Excel, all the calculations are housed under this symbol, which is your sum of symbol that you've seen in equations. And if you click on this, you're going to see that the most common ones are right here for you. And if I go into more functions, it actually pulls up a menu for me that'll actually stay up there and I can use to search for the things I'm looking for. Now I've already labeled these with the exception of standard deviation, which they call STDEV. The rest of these will actually look just like they're listed here. So I can just type them right in. So sum. Okay, so if I click on this, there we go. If I double click, it's going to, oh, that wasn't what I wanted to do. Hold on. All right, first select the cell where you want to put it. I guess I must have forgotten that part. Okay, so I want this calculation to ultimately wind up right here. So I'm going to then double click where it says sum. Now it's automatically going to take a guess at what numbers I'm looking at. Now because the frequencies are here and it's right above, it's automatically pulling those. But you don't want to use that. You want to use your raw data. So I'm just going to go over here and select right down the column until I have everything from A4, which is where this 1 is, to A18, where the 22 is. And you can see A4 to A18. And you could also type it in if you wanted to. Now if I just hit enter, it's going to sum it for me. So the sum is 168. Okay, so let's do the next one. So average is what they call it. There it is, pops it right up. I have the box selected where I'm going to place that calculation. I'm going to double click. And it's also going to assume a number. Now I don't want it to assume D10. I want it to assume what I want it to. So I'm actually going to go ahead and select that same range, A4 to A18, and hit enter. So 11.2 is our mean. Just as simple as that. All right, our maximum value is pretty easy to pull right off the table, but there is actually a formula in here for it. It's called max, as you might imagine. So if I select my cell, double click max, and once again select my data, A4 to A18, just like before, it's going to automatically find that it's 22, but you could have found that just looking at your table because we sorted our data before. And it's easy to find our minimum value. It's going to be 1, but again, you could do it through the formula builder if you wanted to. All right, median. So there is also a calculator button or a formula builder for the median. So if you just type in median, double click. Once again, select your data range from A4 to A18 and hit enter. So our median is 11. Our average was 11.2, but our median is 11. Now our mode. Now the mode we could easily probably pick out because there's only one number that repeats, it's 14, but you can also do that through the formula builder. If you go to mode and double click, and once again select your data range from A4 to A18 in my case, it'll be a little different for yours, and then hit enter, it's going to find that that mode was 14. Now the most complex calculation that you're asking the system to do here is the standard deviation. But for Excel, it's just as easy as calculating any of these other numbers, although we know from doing it longhand that the standard deviation equation takes some time. So if you go up here and do STDEV, double click, and once again you're going to select your data range from A4 to A18. It'll be a little different in your case, and hit enter, and that's automatically going to find your standard deviation for you. Now at that point I've done all the calculations. But one thing you'll notice, now where I was before I was in charts, so I just switched myself back to home. Now other versions of Excel will look a little different. But you'll notice that this has a lot of decimal places, probably a lot more than we actually would like. Now you could just delete it and retype it, but there is a way to actually have the system round it for you. Up here in the editing bar in Excel, you'll see these numbers. You'll have an arrow this way with 2 decimal places and an arrow this way with 2 decimal places. If you click on this arrow, it is actually going to round it for you, and I'll round it to 2 decimal places like this, so our standard deviation will be 6.6, or 6.06, sorry. So aside from the confidence interval calculation that you'll do by hand, this is everything that you need to complete in Excel. Again, if any questions or concerns come up, please just let me know, and I'd be happy to help people on an individual basis. Thank you.